Okay, speaking of rich people who like hearing the sound of their own voices, let's go to the cool kids philosopher, Ben Shapiro. This is somebody who, as we all know,
He's a logic genius.
he's a logic genius. He is a serious philosophic mind. He's the type of person that you could say, well, I'm a liberal, but I appreciate the rigor of his perspective. And I do want to say, I agree with Ben Burgess, who has a book coming out called Give Them an Argument. The left's, I think it's like leftist logic or something. I think that the left does need to get way more comfortable with arguing with these people, debating them. It can't all be snark and moral condemnation. Fair enough. That being said, I just want to remind everybody before we play this clip, which we will logically respond to, this is somebody who is the leading light of this IDW thing. This is somebody who is highly respected by the New York Times. This is somebody who can, goes around spreading the gospel of sweet logic. Well, this is Ben Shapiro. And I don't recall when this is from. You guys don't have this time when this comes from for me. But I don't think this is recent. I think this is a couple of years ago. This is Ben Shapiro.
Evergreen.
It is evergreen. This is Ben Shapiro arguing that people need to calm down about climate change for the following, not only logical, but really intuitive reason. And intuitive in what? Last year. This happened last year, 2017. This is not only logical, it's intuitive. Intuitive in the sense that this is probably a 4-year-old might think of this, but then actually promptly understand why that might not work. We have to include this ridiculous.
So, right. So a couple of things. One, the subset of climate scientists is not all that large. So I really don't care what a doctor in biology has to say about climate change. He knows as much as I do. So it depends on what they have a doctorate in.
That's going to be debatable, as we're going to find
That's
out.
going to be debatable, and I'm also going to say ad hominem. If we can get into the nerd mode
Yeah,
here,
not
right?
really dealing with the argument.
That is not an argument.
That's poisoning the well
yes,
there, buddy.
yeah.
You better watch out. We're gonna monitor this very closely for fallacies.
We're going to monitor this very closely. Go ahead.
Right. So you're right. There are a lot of climate scientists and climatologists who have said that global warming is an absolute fact, and anthropogenic global warming is an absolute fact. They have very different measurements as to how large that effect is going to be. There is a broad range among climatologists, as far as I can tell.
Pause it. There is a broad range among the well over 90% of climatologists who say it is human caused, which he just said in a more fancy way a few seconds ago. And the debate ranges between absolute apocalyptically catastrophic to really bad, and we should urgently do something about it. Go ahead.
Among how much the climate is going to actually change.
Sorry, I just want to tack on. Probabilities work in a funny way, which is that there's a range of them, and what Ben Shapiro and Brett Stevens, the odious older version of him at the New York Times, always point out is like, well, some people say it might only be this amount of degrees, right? They don't point out that when you use probabilities like a lower end range, you have to also include the upper range estimate because it could be either way. That's what That's what uncertainty is.
That's what uncertainty. So in fact, the game of probabilities and uncertainties does not always just point to maybe miraculously 99% of climate scientists are wrong, and there's nothing wrong with pumping unlimited amounts of fossil fuel emissions into the atmosphere. It could also mean that
They're wrong.
Rate of the crisis is actually even faster than the consensus, and the types of massive global breakdowns and premature human deaths are going to happen at an even higher and faster rate than, as an example, a UN climate report might predict. That's how probabilities work. This is logic.
And what is the direct impact of carbon emissions on that, given the fact that for the last 15 years there has been no global warming? The single largest study of global warming that was done in Britain, it turned out a lot of the data was actually kind of falsified. So
kind of falsified because he can't
No,
back
he's
that
going
up.
into an old story of a right-wing effort to smear British climate scientists, and that was an overblown, misleading story to begin with.
Similar to Hillary's emails, the
Yes.
email gate, which also WikiLeaks published.
Yes.
The ClimateGate emails, which is the first, maybe one of the first signals that WikiLeaks was going fascist. But anyway.
Exactly. And also, yes, I don't know if he's confusing. I don't know what he means by no actual warming. I don't know if he's confusing weather with climate, but we'll keep
Well, he's
going.
talking really fast, so it must be true.
Right.
Yeah, but average temperatures have been
increasing. Last couple of summers have been hottest on record year in and year out. So I don't know exactly what he's trying to frame there.
I don't think we've had an under average year since like the 80s, but whatever.
No, well, certainly not in the past several years. Each summer we report.
I'm not saying that it's not happening. It may be happening. You know, I'm happy to say that it may be happening. I might even be happy to say that it's probably happening. But again, unless you have
pause it. So all of the caveats and
I might even be able to say it may be happening.
Do you notice how this sounds a lot like how Trump speaks when he's talking about Michael Cohen? And so all of the poisoning of the well is actually basically irrelevant now because he's actually happy to apparently stipulate the main contention. And this is where it really gets logical.
A solution to the problem that does not involve killing off millions of human beings.
Or raising taxes.
Or raising taxes, right?
No, right, no. No, but this is I agree, but the problem is that if you're going to make, this is another issue where the demonization is significantly more important to the left than actually solving the problem. Right, so everything
ad hominem and projection.
Yep.
The left says about climate change is basically, you're a climate change denier, therefore you're a fool.
Well, yeah.
Well, yes.
Right, as opposed to, okay, maybe you're wrong about climate change denial, but here's
also
the solution that you're...
I'm sorry. It isn't just the left.
Facts
In fact,
don't care.
This is a facts don't care about your feelings because the prime people, look, if there was not anywhere near consensus science on climate change and anthropogenic contributions for it, I will totally concede that my intuition with my politics would lead me to think that pumping an unlimited amount of pollutants into the air is probably doing something to the earth that isn't good. But I wouldn't say you're a fool, like you're a fool for not accepting that, because I wouldn't have the grounds to say that. I'm not going to open up the GMO debate. I have a narrow critique of GMOs from an intellectual property point of view, but I might have concerns that are more broad about GMOs, which I know is not a scientifically validated concern. It's an intellectual bias that I have that I could be right about, but I could be wrong about. But you're not a fool for thinking I'm wrong. The people saying you're a fool for thinking climate change isn't happening aren't leftists. It's those who do climate science.
And it's because we know who paid for the arguments you believe.
And precisely.
But here's the solution that you're ignoring. Where's the solution that's being ignored? Right? I'm sorry, it's not Holocaust denial. The use of the language denier is pretty ridiculous on its face, considering that 30 years ago they were claiming there was going to be a grand.
So now the defense is he's not don't call me the same as a Holocaust denier?
Yeah, now the defense is standpoint epistemology, I believe, which is a thing he also dislikes.
Standpoint epistemology and bizarre non sequitur.
I am offended by this anti-Semitic turn of phrase.
And ice age that was going to freeze us all to death. So, you know, I'm willing to wait for the evidence to come in, especially given the fact that we don't have a good solution for it at this point.
Pause it. We have plenty of great solutions for it. We have solutions like stopping mass deforestation. Norway just banned it. We have work that has actually advanced pretty well in Europe and is starting to advance in China on upgrading energy fleets, on rapidly deploying new renewable technologies. We even have a debate, which I'm on one side of, but is a debate that maybe we can have on nuclear power. There is a debate about re-engineering the United States so that we have more density and better public transportation systems and people aren't dependent on cars. There is literally thousands of smart ideas from the activist, governmental, and private sector, which are being implemented, particularly in the European Union, China, but even actually also India, where they've rapidly deployed solar panels.
Yeah, people are already dying in cities in India because it's too hot there.
So. Oh, and also as far as people dying, I'll just stipulate that in fact, people already are losing their homes and dying prematurely because of causes related to climate change like air pollution and overheated cities. Back to Ben.
Once there's a plausible solution that the left actually wants to propose, we can talk about costs and benefits of it. But I also have to understand what exactly is the real imminent threat to human life. I mean, the idea that the gradual rise of sea levels is going to kill hundreds of millions of people is it's just fantasy. It's just fantasy. It's not going to kill. They act like the day after tomorrow is how global warming is going to be. Right, like the giant wave is going to sweep in, and then the next morning it will freeze, and all of New York will be under ice, and Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal will be trying to fight their way through it. That's not how global warming is going to happen. Right, global warming is going to happen. If it does happen, the rate they say it's going to, it's supposed to happen over the course of the next 100 years. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet. Over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which let's say all of that happens.
Okay, in the world. So all right, so the Caribbean, fair amount of people live there. The Maldives, Bangladesh, and I'm actually going to be more conservative than him because I'm going to say that even though places like New York City will be greatly affected by it, we probably do have like the wealth and the capacity to shield a chunk of it from happening. Miami, that's impossible. Miami's going to be gone. So, okay, we're actually going to stipulate that several countries and, I don't know, hundreds, dozens conservatively of major metropolitan areas are going to be underwater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ben may
I
not,
guess you want to stipulate that.
Ben might not be an expert on how settlements work unless they're in Palestine, but typically, historically speaking, people like to settle along near a body of water.
Yes.
Historically speaking, if you look at like where settlements were in like the 1600s, most human beings lived nearby water. So this is going to cause a problem.
Yeah, living nearby water was not just having a second home. It was also a kind of important part of the development of industrialization in all modern society. But look, it's amazing. Here's what I'll say. Ben is stipulating something, and he's stipulating he's actually been willing to stipulate so far that we could be right, the climate scientists could be right, this could happen, and all of these major coastal areas could be underwater. And I got to tell you something. If he has a solution to this that's workable, I'm all ears because it sounds like he's stipulating everything that we've already said, and I'm open to any new ideas to dealing with these problems, frankly, no matter where they come from.
That all of the water levels around the world rise by let's say 5 feet over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move? It's not like it's all going to happen at once. Like there's just a big tsunami that comes and wipes out everybody. So human beings have a way of adjusting.
Okay.
Wow.
Human beings have a way of adjusting. So that is logic and facts, kids.
And economics.
And
Yeah,
economics.
they're going to sell their increasingly underwater homes.
First, what you do is you flip your house that's underwater.
You believe that? I got a house in Miami to
Yeah,
sell you.
yeah. Hey, let me tell you something. I'll give you a deal. Look, I don't want to make a loss on it. I got a beautiful beachfront home. It's underwater. Don't worry about it. You could swim around the fucking house. The whole thing's a bathtub for you.
Competition would start kicking in.
Competition would start kicking in. Okay. So first, the people that have beautiful beachfront properties will somehow miraculously be able to flip them and move even though the houses are underwater. Other people will buy them.
This is why they want to
Yes.
attack higher education, because you need dumb people to sell
Yes.
your McMansion to.
Yes, exactly. Right. You need to like, all right, I'll move in there. Just so long will it protect me from the caravan if I buy your underwater home, Mr. Shapiro? Okay, so then that will happen. Now, of course, because all of Ben and his friends' world are just rich people with second beach homes, this is the extent of his moral imagination. But another thing that will happen is that millions of people across the world who might even live in like, I don't know, shacks even. They might not really have like beautiful beachfront homes that can easily be flipped into underwater estates. They're going to need to leave where they live, and that's going to create an ecological immigration crisis of which people like Ben do not like. They're already freaked out by people fleeing wars and economic conditions that the foreign policy they support coming into Europe and the United States. So let alone possibly not being able to sell your primo Bangladeshi real estate. So, guys, I know that there will be people who will see this and, of course, say that we have engaged in ad hominems and appealed to your emotions in the context of this video. And I just want to respond to that by just saying, you people are so fucking stupid. And I think that that's an earned ad hominem.
Facts don't care about your feelings, dude. Look it up. There are already climate change refugees.
Yeah, ad hominems can be good tags to actual logical points, and and just because you tag an ad hominem to your logical point doesn't mean that the logical point, because facts don't care about your feelings, doesn't mean the logical point is not valid any longer.
Indeed, and don't tone police comedy, you pricks.